Alright, I'm gonna start this one out with a meme. Look at the meme. It's up there in the corner of the screen. Are the trannies in the room with you right now? That's the joke. It's a meme. I don't know who made it, but I know who it's targeting. It's making fun of right-wingers who talk too much about the transgenders, you know? It's making fun of the right-wingers who draw conspiratorial connections between transgender stuff and other things that they consider evil. So, I am not a Trump-supporting right-winger, but I do feel targeted by this meme. I do think it's making fun of me. So I want to talk about it, because I actually think, well, there's a lot to say. Today is January 9th, 2022. And are the trannies in the room with me right now? That's the question. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I've talked about the transgender concept quite a bit. I think that there's a lot revolving around this one concept. That's why it draws so many people in, from the right and the left. There's a lot of people who are very far left-wing that are very, you know, they have their pronouns in their Twitter bio. They're very pro-trans rights. Trans rights are human rights. Trans women are women. You know, there's people who, you know, why exactly are they reciting these things? Why exactly? And then why are the people on the left, on the right, I mean, so conspiratorial when it comes to these things? I mean, clearly, if you, like I said, if you look at my videos, you see that I've drawn conspiratorial connections between the trans rights people and all sorts of other people. Like, I myself see those connections. So, like I said, this meme targets me in some way. You know, it's a psychiatrist asking a person, are they in the room with you right now? Which is kind of saying that this person's mentally insane and they're just hallucinating things or making things up, right? And it's clearly making fun of this group of people. Somebody out there made this meme to make fun of this group of people. And I think it's funny. I think it's a funny meme, really. I enjoy it. I remember it enough that I'm making a video about it right now. You know, I saw it a long time ago. And, well, why are we even talking about transgender people? Why does this meme exist? Why are people drawing conspiracies about this? Well, here's my take. You know, this is why I'm making this video. It seems to me, first of all, like I always say, there's obviously a difference between transgender people and trans rights activists. They seem like they are two distinct, mutually exclusive, distinct groups of people. I mean, there's got to be some overlap, but mostly distinct. I don't know what that Venn diagram looks like, but those two circles are probably farther apart than most people might imagine. So, here's my problem with it. Here's my problem, and I have to start with COVID and masks and things. The people who are very much going to call you out for being transphobic, the people that are very pro-trans rights, are exactly the same people that will call you out for not wearing a mask. So personally, I used to live in Los Angeles, and I have had many confrontations over masks in my life here. I drove across the country, and I went into all sorts of places across the entire country, and my take on masks is that they're mostly useless. They're actually probably entirely useless from the way that I see it, and you can make arguments for one or two use cases, but generally it seems that we have been told to wear these for it seems to me that it's unreasonable to wear masks most of the time, at least where I've seen them being worn, especially the types of masks that I've seen. And what I'm trying to get at here is that when I'm in a room where most people, or 99, where I'm the only one not wearing a mask, when I'm in a room where I'm the only one not wearing a mask, and I'm in a conservative area, or really any area, let me restart the story. When I'm in the room, only one not wearing a mask, it seems pretty clear to me that I'm not the only person who thinks masks are useless. It's just that a lot of people go along with it because it's less painful. It's just easier to put the mask on and just go along with it. Because the way that this works is that if you're in this room, you're the only one not wearing a mask. All it takes is for one or two people to confront you about it publicly, which is what has happened to me so many times now that a lot of times now, in a lot of places across the entire country, where I'll be the only one not wearing a mask because I think it's unreasonable, because I don't think I need to be wearing one. I don't think I'm risking anybody's life. I think what I'm doing is perfectly rational and not immoral, not evil. I think I'm just behaving like a normal person, a non-crazy person, not wearing a mask, honestly. But then what happens, like I said, one or two people are true believers in the mask, true believers, and so they confront me publicly. They tell me, you need to put a mask on. They say, do you have a mask? I say, nope. They say, you need to get one. I say, no, I don't. Or they'll say, you're endangering everybody, and I say, no, I'm not. Like, I've had this conversation 1,000 different ways. There's no way that I can convince them. We're not talking, right? We're not having a conversation. It's not a dialectic. There's no attempt to learn from each other here, right? I can't change their mind at all. There's nothing I can do. The only thing I can do is submit and just put the mask on. That's the only way out of that conversation that doesn't involve a fist fight. Really. This is my experience personally, because what happens is somebody comes up to me, they say, you need to wear a mask, and I just give them all the reasons why I don't. There's no way that there was ever a chance that they were going to walk away from me and be happy with my answer there, unless I'm wearing a mask. The only way for them to be happy with me, for them to stop confronting me, is either for me to leave the room, really, or to put the mask on. There's no other choice. There's no other choice, because I can get into a fight, which has almost happened to me several times. I was in a pool hall in Austin, Texas, socially distanced, but I was inside of a building, far more than 6 feet away from anybody. I was playing pool by myself on some Thursday night or something. You know, I was doing this cross-country road trip, just chilling out, and not wearing a mask. Not a big deal. Nobody really cared until this one couple comes up to me and start giving me shit about it, right? They're both wearing a mask. Clearly, everybody in the room was, except for me. Like I said, I'm at a pool table, very far away from anybody else, dozens of feet, probably 20 or more feet away from any other human being. And they come up to me, you know, more than 6 feet, within 6 feet, right? And start confronting me, and she's yelling, and she's drawing the attention of everybody else in the room. And so now it's me standing there, not wearing a mask, with two people in my face, a guy and a girl. Girl's yelling, guy's getting very physical, right? He's getting his shoulders up, he's putting his chin up, he's showing that he wants to fight. Girl is screaming, right? I'm standing there saying all of the same things I usually say. Now, of course, no human being can remain calm and rational in this situation. So I'm trying to remain calm. I'm trying to keep my breathing at 5 seconds a piece, you know, in, out, trying to focus on mindfulness, trying to only say things that I know I should say to these people, but it doesn't matter. The guy goes to throw a punch, right? He does this thing where he kind of like pretends to throw a punch. I had my hands down because I knew that what's going to happen here if I decide to fight this guy? What's going to happen? First of all, not a single person in that room is going to help me out in this fight. It'll be everybody versus me, right? Instantly. They know, those two people know that they have the entire room on their side. And the thing is, if I were to pull everybody secretly in that room, I know in that room, this is Austin, Texas, I know that that's not necessarily a conservative place, but I know not everybody in that room necessarily disagrees with what I'm doing. Not everybody in that room thinks I need to be wearing a mask. A lot of people probably think, whatever, who cares what he's doing? A lot of people would prefer to not even think about me at all, right? But that's not what, here's what I'm getting at here. This is why I started with this meme in the beginning. There's really only one or two true believers, and then they can dictate my behavior because they know that nobody else in the room is going to stop them. Really. That's my problem with this, is that it's a kind of a social control mechanism. It's like a social pathological control mechanism. Maybe these two people really believe that I'm endangering people's lives. Maybe they really believe I need to wear a mask. But what they're doing is wielding this ideology. They're wielding this idea like I need to wear a mask for the sake of public health. They're guising it. They're disguising their behavior as compassion or justice or something, right? They're framing the situation, even if they really believe it, they're framing it as if I'm the bad guy and they have the moral high ground. So when they walk up to me, they are these two people who care about everybody in the room and I'm the asshole who doesn't care about everybody in the room. Even though in my mind, the way that I see it realistically, I'm endangering nobody. I had no symptoms. At this point, I already had COVID. I had been tested many times. I wasn't endangering anybody. Plus, I was socially distanced. So, I wasn't breathing on anybody, but I don't think that's what this is all about. I don't think it's about public health. I don't think it's about compassion. It's not about justice. And if you don't see that with masks, then I don't know who I'm talking to. But if you don't see that and the reflection with the whole trans rights thing, this is where I get to here. This is the conspiratorial connection. Those same two people who would wield this mask ideology as a tool to gain power over me, right? Because what they're trying to do is force me to engage in a behavior that I don't want to engage in. They are wielding power to force me to do a thing I don't want to do. I don't want to put a mask on. What I had to do was leave that room. They yelled at me enough. And it got to the point where it was going to get physical. And I decided, okay, what are my choices here, right? I can't stay because they're just going to keep yelling at me. What am I supposed to do? I could fight them. I could punch the guy in the face. What's that going to do? That's going to make everybody else, that's going to start a little brawl, a little tussle. Everybody's going to have to come pull me apart. It's going to get recorded. It's going to get put on the internet somewhere. And then it's going to be framed as the asshole who's not wearing a mask fights a bunch of mask wearers, right? There's no positive outcome for me in this situation. There's no way for me to do what I want to do, which is not wear a mask, and also have a positive outcome. I either have to kneel, I have to submit, put a mask on, or I have to leave that room. So that's what I did. I left the room. It was the only option I had, really. And you might be thinking, like, why not just go along with it? Well, that's the problem, is that people just go along with it. Like everybody else in the room just goes along with it, right? Had there been 2 of me in the room or 10 of me in the room, maybe I would have had a chance, because then it would have been people being like, hey, leave the guy alone. Leave him the fuck alone. If you don't want him near you, he won't go near you, right? Like, just don't, like these are 2 people who are so concerned about COVID, and yet they're in a public place on a Thursday night, right? So it's not about public health awareness. And just like how the trans rights thing, it's not about the transgender people. It's about wielding a tool over people. It's about forcing people to behave a certain way. If somebody doesn't want to recognize that a male who identifies as a woman is a woman, that's perfectly within their rights, right? They don't have to say anything. They don't have to use the proper pronouns. They don't have to say she. They don't have to say, yes, this is a girl. They don't have to do that stuff. But if you're in a room where there's 2 people who are the true believers, who really believe that a trans woman's a woman, they're going to confront you and they're going to yell at you. Nobody's going to take your side. The only way to get out of it is to kneel, say, okay, yes, or to leave the room. It's a social tool. It's a pathological social tool. And they both rest on lies, in my opinion, right? These masks really aren't that useful. They really are mostly useless in most situations. We've been wearing them mostly for no reason. For no reason other than to signal that you're going along with the ideology, right? It's the same thing with the trans rights stuff. It's the same energy. And it's anti-liberal, which is what scares me about this, right? This is why people on the right get so worked up about this, about the trans rights stuff. It's not because they give a single fuck about transgender people. Most people don't give a fuck what you do or how you act or what you're calling yourself, because that's not really what it's about. The reason that there's the transgender thing sits at the center of so many right-wing conspiracy theories is that this group of people, the trans rights activists, are the same people who, if you saw that example during the Black Lives Matter protests, the George Floyd protests, there was this one particular incident of an outdoor seating area, I want to say in Portland, probably in Portland, where there was a restaurant with an outdoor seating area. There was a Black Lives Matter protest going by. They went up to the outdoor seating area where people are just eating, and they said, put your fist up for BLM, right? They said, you have to put your fist up for BLM. So it's a bunch of people, I don't know how many, sitting in this little restaurant outside. They have to put their fist up like this, right? For BLM. All of them did it except for one girl. I don't know who she is. She's a hero, in my opinion, but they harassed the fuck out of her. They yelled at her. She was like trying to keep her head down. She just said, no, I don't want to do it. She was trying to argue with them. They recorded her. They put her up on the internet. They gave her as much shit as they possibly could. They made her life as difficult as they possibly could, simply because she would not go along with them, right? She wouldn't put her fist up. She wouldn't put a mask on. She wouldn't use the proper pronouns. You see how there's a pattern here? It's not about black people. It's not about, like, BLM does not help black people. BLM is just a political tool. It's a social tool to force people to do things. It's a way to force behavior from other people. And it's disguised as compassion. It's disguised as justice. But that's not really what it is. What it really is a way to force people to behave a certain way. So that's why, you know, there's a connection between BLM, between trans rights activists. That's clear. If you don't see a connection between BLM and TRAs, you're blind, I think. They're the same people. They're the same groups of people. And if you don't see a connection between that and between this unreasonable behavior around masks, that's, to me, is what really, you know, this is what really freaked me out about LA. It's why I left Los Angeles. It's because I cannot live in a place where I'm going to be forced to behave a certain way. I just can't do it. It's mentally degrading. It's emotionally degrading. It's just, I hate submitting. I don't want to submit to a thing like this, right? I'm not that type of person. And when I don't think I need to be wearing a mask, I'm not going to put on a fucking mask. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to do it just to go along, just so everybody else feels better. Because I don't think that's really what it's about. You know, you'll sit there and make the argument, oh, it's for everybody else's health, it's for everybody else's feelings so they can feel safer. That's not what it's fucking about. That's not. That's a lie. That's compassion used in a dishonest way to force me to behave a certain way. The evidence around these masks is just, it's weak. There's weak evidence that it even does anything. A lot of this, you know, it doesn't feel like a big deal, right, to just put a mask on. But every time you put that mask on when you don't think you need to, you're just giving them more power. You're giving this group, this ideology, more power. Because think about what's happened here with this pandemic. Think about what's happened. It's a test. They're testing to see who will comply with unreasonable demands. When you walk into a store and they say, you have to put this mask on or else you can't shop here. What would happen if everybody said no? Okay, we're not going to shop here then, right? If everybody just said no, fine, you're not getting any business, they would change their minds, right? They'd be like, oh, shoot, okay, fine, don't wear a mask, right? It's not... The choice is in our hands as a society. Like, we can just stop it by not going along with it. If somebody calls you transphobic or racist, if you just don't feel affected by that, then they have no power. Like, the power is really where we believe the power is. And so that's why this kind of freaks me out, because there's this tiny group of people dictating the behavior of the majority, right? Most people don't give a single fuck about BLM or trans rights. They don't care. And yet they will, if a group of angry BLM people comes up to them, they'll put their fist up. Or if somebody says, hey, is this a woman, like pointing at a picture of Leah Thomas or something, they'll be like, yeah, it's a woman, okay, yeah, don't talk to me anymore, right? They just go along with it. Which, for your own, as an individual, that might make your life easier. But you're complying with an ideology that is anti-liberal. Because this isn't just about control. I mean, look at what they do with speech, right? It's hard for me to stay on track. I'm trying to stay on track. But they take away people's power to speak. The same people. If you're transphobic on Twitter, you get kicked off. If you're racist on Twitter, you get kicked off. And they can just accuse you of these things. If you're promoting vaccine hesitancy, you get kicked off. We've seen doctors get kicked off Twitter. If you're Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump, you get kicked off Twitter. And the people doing this kicking off, the people that are in support of this, the people that are in support of deplatforming, are the same people who are pro-mask, pro-trans rights, pro-BLM. It's the same set of ideas here. That's the conspiratorial connection. That's why people on the right, that's why this meme that I showed in the beginning of the video exists. Is because there's this connection with all this stuff. There's this illiberal strain of ideas that does not support free speech. That's, to me, it always comes back to free speech, because it's like, if you support the deplatforming of Marjorie Taylor Greene, which happened recently, she was recently banned off Twitter. If you support that, I don't know what to see that as other than illiberal. It's the opposite of liberalism. It's quite literally the opposite of what the Constitution stands for. It's your whatever rule book you're playing by. If you support the deplatforming of people who are transphobic, of the people who are the white supremacists, of the people like Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you support the deplatforming of doctors who are promoting vaccine hesitancy, if you support the deplatforming of people who have doubts about masks, right? If you're one of those people who thinks that the deplatforming or the cancellation or the removal of the speech should happen to any of these people, then what rule book are you playing by? Like, you're not using the Constitution. You're not playing by that rule book, right? So if these people gain power, if we let the deplatforming section of society, if we let the people who are these trans rights activists gain power, which they have been doing, if we let them gain enough power, the rule book that they're using is not the Constitution, right? So when we're talking about what game we're playing, I made a video about this a long time ago titled, "What Game Are We Playing?" It's like, all right, fine, you want to take over, you want to have control over these platforms, right? Then what rule book are you using? What rule book? And am I going to need a gun during this game, right? When you're playing this game, am I going to need to show up with a gun? Because I don't know what rules you're using. You're not using the Constitution, so you're using something else. Am I going to need to defend myself from you, right? Because I am not going to kneel to this ideology. I am not going to say Black Lives Matter. I am not going to say trans women are women. I will not say these things. I won't. I would rather be shot to death than say these things. I would rather not wear a mask when I don't need to wear a mask in the same exact way. It's a behavior I do not want to be forced to do. I understand that there may be cases, there may be times when wearing a mask is reasonable. Most of the time, I don't believe that to be the case. Most of the time, I don't believe that to be the case. And I largely see it as a political tool. It's a way, I mean, I'm going to bring in Alex Jones into this now, because I think that he has actually described a pattern that is real. And I know that he's got quite a reputation, this guy, Alex Jones. I think as an exercise, you should listen to one of his shows just for an hour, just to kind of hear how he talks, what he talks about. Because I think he's been misrepresented in a lot of ways. He's really misrepresented as some totally batshit crazy guy. I think that he simply sees the world from a very... Well, either way, I don't want to defend him, but I am going to describe something that he described before. So what this is he says it's the globalists, right? That's his enemy. That's his storyline. He always talks about the globalists. He says the globalists, what they'll do is tighten the restraints. So we're at like a level 0 of restraint, right? What they'll do is tighten it. They bring us from 1 to 5, from 0 to 5, or whatever it is, right? They go, okay, you were at 1, we're going to go to 5 because COVID's happening, right? We need to restrict your movement, but it's only temporary. Don't worry, we'll let go soon, right? So they tighten the restrictions. They contract. They restrict our behavior. They control our behavior. And then they release it. But they don't release it back to 1 or to 0. They release it back to 2. So they tighten it really tight, and they get us to freak out a little bit. They go as hard as they can. They see who will comply, right? That's what this whole thing was. It's a test. It's a test to see who will comply with these rules. They wanted to see what sort of unreasonable behavior could they get reasonable people to engage in. Putting a mask on a lot of the times is pretty much as reasonable as asking you to hop around on one foot, put on an eye patch, tie 2 of your fingers together, right? Do your shopping with only your right hand. You know, like that's what they're doing. They're just asking you to behave in a way that's unreasonable. They disguise it as justice, or they disguise it as compassion, disguise it as public health, but really it's coercing you into behaving in a way that you normally wouldn't want to behave in. And so they tighten it, they get you to, they test it out, they tighten it, they get us to freak out, and then they release the restrictions to get us to calm down. And then what they're gonna do, tighten it again. And when they go, it won't be to 5, it'll be to 6. So we're going to 1 to 5, they release to 2, they tighten it again, they go to 6, they release, it'll go to 3. And then over time, over years and years and years, they have a very tight control over us. That's the progression forward that Alex Jones talks about. That's what he sees. That's what he's been describing for a long time. And you can make arguments for him being correct about this. This whole COVID thing is proof of that. They were really just this is that ideology. It's the BLM, trans rights activists, authoritarian, pro-mask, pro-vaccine mandate ideology, whatever it is. This need for this illiberal dominance, this need to like control people's behavior. I don't know what it is. I don't know who believes it. I don't know what kind of idea it is that's taking people over. I don't know how to describe it. I see a lot of Marxism in it, but it's really just like a weird swirl of ideas. And I think that's why it sounds so conspiratorial from a right-wing point of view, because the right-wingers are sitting here complaining about all this stuff and they sound crazy because they're like, oh, the masks and the trannies, and it's like, but I mean, it's hard to say what is real and what isn't. I don't know who to trust, who not to trust. I don't know what exactly is holding power in this country, but it's clear to me that when I'm in a room of people, that the people wearing the masks have power over me. Because I have to leave the room or fight them with my fists. And I'm going to, those are both losing things, right? What I want is to exist in the room and not wear the mask and have nobody bother me. That's what I want. That's the room I want to, that's the world I want to live in, where I can just behave how I want to behave and people don't give a fuck, right? Isn't that exactly what the transgender people want? To just live how they want to live and people not give a fuck, right? That's why this isn't really about the transgender people. It's about the people wielding some sort of tool to gain power. There's like this political tool, and it's getting people. I mean, how many people in this country have put a mask on when they thought it was silly? How many people? Like nearly all of us have worn these masks at some point and been thinking, I don't really need to do this, right? So why are we wearing them? It's because we're submitting. We're submitting. It's a submissive behavior. And I hate it. I hate doing it. And it gets me in trouble all the time. It's why I had to leave LA. It's because there's so many times where, I mean, first of all of my social circles died. Every social thing I did every week was just canceled by the pandemic. And I could only hang out with my 2 roommates. And then like whenever I did want to hang out with somebody else, the behavior was like so absurd. It was so unreasonable from everybody I was talking to. And this was early on in the pandemic. I couldn't really make arguments as well for why the masks were kind of silly, but I always knew they were kind of silly. I always felt that way, at least. And now there's so much evidence that's like, do these masks do anything? And yet everybody keeps wearing them. And, like I said, I drove around the country. I went to gyms all the time to take showers, but to work out. And there's this thing that happens where you never really see a room with like a 75-25 of mask to not mask. It's always like 99 one way or the other, right? Because if you walk in and you're the only one wearing a mask in a room full of maskless people, generally you feel like a moron. Generally, unless you're one of the true believers who really believes these masks help and you really think you're doing the right thing. But most people aren't really so sure about it one way or the other. They think that, all right, they'll just do the easy thing. So when they walk into a room and they see most people not wearing a mask, they just take the mask off, right? Because that's what they would rather do. They would prefer to not have this thing over their face. So when they see that they have the chance to not have it over their face, they take the mask off. But then if you see these rooms where there's 98% of people wearing masks, most people walk in, they go, oh shoot, and then they put the mask on. Because again, it's a social thing more than anything. It's not about public health. It's not about this. That's just all a lie. This idea that it's about protecting people or saving people, it's built on truth. I mean, masks clearly, physically, have some sort of effect on the spread, but the actual physical reality of the effect of a mask on viral spread, like whatever real thing is happening there, is not really the motivation for why these masks are being worn. It's not. These masks are being worn. To me, this is an ideology flexing its muscles. It's saying, all right, how many people in this country can we get to do something unreasonable? It's like a test run, right? Now they know. Think about the amount of data that's been collected by them, right? Whatever quote unquote them is. Now we can see that this idea, they know that they can get people to kneel for BLM. They know they can get people to wear these masks, right? This is like it's like a flexing of the muscles of some sort of ideological contagion or some sort of pathological thing in our country right now that really, really cares about controlling speech and controlling behavior. It's like a controlling thing that's gaining power, forcing people to behave and speak a certain way. That is the enemy. You know, that to me is the illiberal, anti-constitutional, anti-free speech thing. That's what is scary to me. That's the connection between, I don't know how else I can make this clear. I keep getting thumbs up on my videos, and I guess that means people agree with what I'm saying, or they like what I'm saying, or they're okay with what I'm saying. I get people who argue with me once in a while. Some people tend telling me that I'm overreacting or over-exaggerating the threat here, but I don't. It has occurred to me that there is a human tendency to imagine the end of the world is near in a dishonest way to avoid responsibility. If you think the world's going to end in 2024, there's no reason to do any work leading up to 2024. So it's a perfect excuse to not do anything or to behave a certain way. So I have to be aware of that temptation inside of myself. And I do see it inside other people as well. I've seen it inside left-wingers and right-wingers. You got these left-winger people who think the world's going to shit because Trump, and then the right-winger people who think the world's going to shit because trannies, you know? So, when in reality, most likely what's going to happen with this whole free speech thing is some sort of decentralized autonomous organization is going to just provide us a service where cancellation is actually technically impossible. It'll be some sort of Web3 based thing where it's not really owned by anybody. And in order to make a tweet, for example, you have to like pay 1 penny or something. And so that's the price you pay. You pay a penny to make a tweet. You put $1 into a bank account so that you can make 100 tweets or something. That's where these Web3 people are headed. And then when you make the tweet, not a single human being on the planet can take that down except for you. As long as you have the only access to that password. And if you lose the password, that tweet's up there till the end of time. So that's, to me, that's the solution for this controlled speech thing. But there's still the societal pressure of it. And I know people are going to talk about like accountability culture and responsibility culture, but these words always revolve around things that are just compassion. It's an urge. It's like it's power disguised as compassion, right? They'll say, oh, we need to hold people accountable and make sure people don't say racist things or don't say transphobic things because, you know, for the good of society, in order to have progress in some direction. But it's the same exact people, it's the same rhetoric, it's the same tools as the people who say we need to have everybody wear masks so we can protect grandma. It's power. It's about power. And that's what's scary. I'm going to show you some cat footage. I'm probably going to end this video, right, Dusty? It's all about power. Alright, that's probably about enough for this video. Today's January 9th, 2022. I'd rather, I just know I'm not going to kneel to this thing, and I know that people think that I'm over-exaggerating the threat, but well, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I'll see you later.